Manciolino presents 7 plays or examples or instructions of how to fence someone when you have a unaccompanied one-handed sword. And he uses a tactic exclusively in that. It's not all he does, but it's all he talks about with this weapon by itself. He says pressing, stringere, squeezing your opponent, and from the guard of porti fer stretta. And he's very clear on the footwork there, driving your front foot forward with your rear foot. I'm going to be referencing Anonimo Bolognese a lot in Manciolino today because Anonimo explains what Manciolino did not. So Manciolino says to drive your front foot forward with your rear foot. Manciolino says that, but Anonimo tells you how to do it. Take your back foot right up, almost touching your front foot, and push forward. This foot, that foot. This is driving your front foot forward with your rear foot. They all reference it, but Anonimo describes it. So that's the footwork. Now, I've always said that you don't want to press somebody with your point right in their face because they're not going to want to do what is expected. Manciolino doesn't tell you about this. He just says, drive your front foot forward, pressing your opponent. But I'd like him to try to thrust at me. The idea of this pressing is to get my opponent to attack me first. That's explicitly the objective here. But it's not likely to do that with my point right in his face. But again, it's Anonimo who confirmed what I've been saying, is that you take your point somewhat to your opponent's right side. Take your point offline when you do this. So what we do is we take this point out of the face over to the side, my inside. I take it to my opponent's outside, and then I start driving my front foot forward, and the objective is I'd like him to attack me first. Okay, and that's what Manciolino's plays are all about, this tactic. And he gives 7 examples of what to do about it once I get him to do what I want, when I get him to give me what I asked for. Now, he's got different responses of what may happen. Your opponent may thrust at you, or that's the first one, the next 4, he may thrust at you, but really only to make some second action. He thrusts in order to throw a cut to your head or to your legs. Those are the next 4. And then we get up to the last 2, 6 and 7. Now in 6, the next to the last one, he says that I press my opponent in that way, and he can thrust at me, but he also can cut at me as well. Why? What's going on here is I'm getting so close to him that he really needs only one step. When we are out here, which is our normal starting range, he's got to plan some strategy. He's got to provoke me. He's got to get me to uncover something. He's got to beat my blade. He's got to make an action to entice me in. He's got to do something because we are 2 full steps apart. But if I press him, I've taken away one of those steps. I'm pressing him, and all of a sudden I'm close, and he doesn't need 2. He can actually do it in 1. So he can actually attack me for real there. And this is something to keep in mind when you're looking at these last 2, because here alone in the last 2, he says, well, he can cut at your head or thrust at you. And the head is, the upper body is the likely target here. Now, in the first one of these last 2, number 6, Manciolino says that you will parry this, say it's just keep it simple for a thrust right here. And I parry that with my false edge, with a falso, not past guardia di faccia. And then I make a mezza volta, that means I turn my hand and step forward and stab him in the face. So parrying not past guardia di faccia. He literally means that. If you were looking at a clock, that's at 12 o'clock. You do a beat and you stop it right here. When you beat, as dall'agocchie says, you want to use your you want to use your debole. That's your forte. I'm not getting here, and as he's thrusting, I'm going into guardia di faccia in my forte. That's not an effective parry. And if I do that, I'm not effectively knocking it away. And if I want to get it away, I'm actually going past guardia di faccia. Plus, I'm actually hitting in the temple with my false edge. If I do that, it's not the action. He doesn't say to do it into that guard, and he doesn't mean that. We can clearly see that if you look at the first one. He mentions that as well, but in a totally different context. It's not that. So I am in number 6, not going past here, so that I can take that point, which is right in front of his face, and extend it, turning my palm down, stepping forward. And that's the 6th play. We're really going to be looking at the 7th play right now, but I wanted you to know that because in the 7th play, he says, against the thrust, you can also hit him with a mandrito. He doesn't say anything about stopping your point in front of your opponent's face in this case, and that's why. If I've taken my point to his outside and I've pressed him, driving my front foot forward with my rear foot, and he attacks me, if I parry with the falso and my point does go past his face, I'm to strike immediately with a mandrito. He says hitting the head and falling down upon the arm, and he says advancing, stepping forward with your front foot. He says as much as you want to get that accomplished. So a mandrito. It's not a half mandrito, meaning when I parry that, I will raise this up and drop it strongly down. It'll point to the ceiling, to the sky there. And we also know this from, again, Anonimo Bolognese, where he's got an example or two as well, where he says, oh, parry that with a falso and allow your sword to go past guardia di faccia. He actually said it. So sometimes your sword will go past guardia di faccia, and what does he follow that up with? Of course, not a thrust, a cut, a mandrito, naturally. So there's the 7th play, and you see why it looks like it does. I start in porti fer strada. I take my point here. So that, why? Do we want to stop people from attacking us? Do we want to prevent it? Do we want to make it difficult for people to attack us? No, not at all. That's not the Bolognese way. It is not. They say over and over again, when at all possible, always allow your enemy to attack you first. I don't want to make it difficult. I don't want to put up roadblocks, impediments to that. So I take my point. That's why I'm going towards him. That's the whole reason I'm advancing. I take my point over here. That way also I can make an easy falso. I drive my front foot forward with my rear foot. I can only get so close. If I keep going here, this is, no, too close. There's a limit to that, beyond which it's not safe, not smart. Back up a couple steps. So and 2, if we are already here, okay, I'm going to start doing this. Too close. I can't start doing this now. And the idea too here is got to get that front foot down on the floor as fast as possible. Reference the works of dall'agocchie there. He says one of the moments to attack is when your opponent lifts his front foot off the floor. That's a moment to attack somebody. So do I want to lift this foot and make a movement like that? No, it's going to attack me. I don't want that because I'm not prepared then. I'm not settled in a guard. I am, as they would say, disordered. It's not what I want. I need to be well positioned. So over here, this foot, then that foot, this foot. Here, hit that and go past the center and advance as much as I want to and strike down quickly on the head. And he says, let that fall upon the arm. Why? I want to make sure he doesn't throw anything else. So that's the 7th one. It's simple in and of itself. It's not tricky, but I do want you to understand why it looks like it does. There is what it looks like. My point went past guardia di faccia. And I threw a mandrito down upon a powerful one, driving myself forward. Manciolino states when you walk around in this guard that you do so taking steps about as wide as half the length of your arm. So you're making these types of movements. It's nice because he doesn't have to say in some sort of, we don't need it in feet and inches. He told you body part, this much. So it's not, okay? We don't do that. Please don't make it look like that. That's not Bolognese. Okay. The thing to understand is the difference between the 6th and the 7th instruction of Manciolino. You've pressed your opponent. They've attacked you. You've beat it. In the case where you do not go past guardia di faccia, thrust. Make a mezzo volta, extend your arm and advance with the rear foot thrusting. In the case where you do the same thing except you go past, advance your front foot and strike with the mandrito. If I've parried and I haven't gone past guardia di faccia, obviously, why would I want to cut here? The thrust is the thing, because my point is there. If my point isn't there, don't thrust. Why would I? I'm set up for the cut. I advance the front foot. That's what's most important. The reason why there are two versions of that, that's the reason. Because when you stop here, you'll thrust, and when you don't, when you allow your sword to go past that, you will not thrust. It's just sort of logical. Advancing in either case, but when you thrust, advance with your back non-dominant foot. When you cut, advance with your front dominant foot. If I'm waiting here as patient, he presses me, I just go forward. So in this case, if I make a sincere attack, I don't want to telegraph it. And I don't want to be too wide of a stance. Again, this is not what Manciolino describes. You may see the images in Marozzo look like this, but Marozzo and Manciolino are not identical in that regard. Manciolino is telling you lots of times to stand in narrow of a stance and keep a bend in your back knee. Marozzo has you like this, similar, but Marozzo also tells you lots of times to shorten up that stance into a narrow guard. He's got you starting wide, and then he says, oh, and draw your back foot in closer to your front foot and shorten up your stance. Manciolino never has to tell you to do that. You're already doing that with Manciolino. See the difference? So not too wide of a stance, I'm ready. If I get this person pressing me, I don't want to draw this back, and if I really want to hit him, I'll just go forward. If I want to provoke him, as is the case in some of these, yeah, I'll do that then. I'll show this a little bit so that I can execute my second intention. I'll telegraph a provocation, but not if I'm not. But he also says this could be a cut in this case from the adversary here. So if I get pressed, I could throw a cut. So I could either lift my point and do a half mandrito. He's talking about a mandrito though. So I'll quickly raise my hand and throw that down. Powerful, and it's fast. So any way you like to do that, you can do that as well.